What's going on, guys, and welcome to Who to Sign For. Now in this series I'm giving you my recommendations on what players to sign for a specific team in career mode, but before we go on I will say that the signings you'll see aren't designed to be realistic and that the player ratings and potentials of the players may vary depending on what database you're using and how they perform for you during the season. Obviously you don't have to follow all the tips, this is really just a set of guidelines to give you a hand if you're stuck for ideas and want some suggestions on what players you could sign for a certain club. This is mainly aimed at those out there who may be new to the game and just need a little bit of advice, or for those out there who want a few recommendations on what players to sign for a team that you may be using in career mode this year. You know, at some point you guys are going to know that first introduction off by heart, but yes, in today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys, we are going to take a look at Norwich City. That's right, Norwich City of the Premier League in England, who of course last season won promotion from the Championship, but right now in their debut year back in the top flight are having a very tough time. As I record this commentary, they are rock bottom of the Premier League with just 11 games to go and I think 7 points off safety. I think favourites to go down right now as things stand. Hopefully they can turn it around and pull off a great escape, but it is, as things stand, quite unlikely, as it will be a very difficult challenge. Now, Norwich City, after some wage budget alterations, start off with a budget of around 29 to 30 million pounds in the game, but they do have one of the weakest teams in the Premier League, and as I run you through the squad right here, you can see why they've had a struggling first season. There's not a great deal of real quality in their first team compared to the other teams in the Premier League. But the one thing about Norwich which makes them a very fun team to use for a career mode is that A, they would be a big challenge staying in the Premier League in the first season. B, they've got a real stadium. But C, the coolest thing about Norwich is they've got loads of good young talent here already. They're such a good young team, and anyone that's watched Norwich play this season in the Premier League will tell you they play some good football as well. You know, Daniel Farke is their head coach. He's a young German manager. I believe he's in his early 40s, and before he joined Norwich about 2 or 3 years ago now, he was actually the reserve head coach at Borussia Dortmund. He then made the step into permanent first team management, taking over at Carrow Road, and he's done an excellent job developing young talent with Norwich and getting them into the Premier League. As you look at the side here, there are so many good young players. You got the likes of Ben Godfrey, Jamal Lewis, obviously Todd Cantwell, Max Aarons, you would say is probably their brightest young prospect. Even players outside of Britain such as Buendia, who's come in and plays right midfield for them. He's also a really good talent as well. There's a lot of really good young players here at this Norwich side, and also Ida, can't forget Ida, the young striker as well. But there's also quite a few aging players at Norwich too. A few players had their deals up. I wouldn't give contracts to any of those players who have their contracts expiring come the end of the year. But yeah, quite a few aging players as well. You saw my transfer list there. Most of those players are in their 30s right now. So yeah, Norwich for sure would be a really fun team to use for a career mode. There'll be a challenge in the first season. You will be statistically one of the weakest teams in the division based on your player rating, so it will be hard for you to stay in the Premier League. That adds to the challenge. But again, you've got some great young talent to nurture, and a good rebuild is needed here at Carrow Road with more young players coming in. But for new signings with Norwich City, again, you start off with a budget of around £30 million after wage budget alterations. And as we've seen this season in the Premier League, Norwich's real problem is that they struggle to defend. They play some really attractive football. It's very easy on the eye, but defensively they can be a little bit fragile at times. So my recommendation is to improve that back line. You've got two really good young fullbacks in Jamal Lewis on the left and of course Max Aarons on the right. You've got a good young centre half in Ben Godfrey, but he's only 71 rated in the game. You're going to need better first team quality centre halves if you're going to survive in the Premier League. And my number one sole primary target for a new centre half in Norwich City would be this guy right here, Fikayo Tomori of Chelsea. And as I've mentioned so many times before, I'm a massive fan of this kid. I think he is such an amazing young talent. Now in the game, you can get him for his valuation, which is £12 million if you include a sell-on clause as well. Because Chelsea have enough depth in the CB area and Tomori is not the highest rated centre-back there, they won't hold you to ransom over his signing. Therefore, you can get him on an absolute steal, which again is his valuation. That's what we paid, £12 million for him. He's only 21 years old, but he's already 77 rated, which means he'll go right into your first team and become your highest rated centre-back, and he's also got 87 potential as well. He's quick, he's strong, he's tall enough, and he's comfortable on the ball as well. Tomori would be the #1 target for a Norwich City career mode with absolutely no questions asked. He is an amazing young defender. I'm really big on the kid, and yeah, here at Carrow Road, he would help help shore up your backline and your defensive woes. Definitely recommend Tomori over any other centre back here. He would really improve your weak backline. But still, following that, we did sell a few players. We just sold Steeperman, and now we were trying to sell Grant Hanley and also Vrankic as well. I think, did he go to Crystal Palace in this episode? I think he did. Yeah, he goes to Crystal Palace for £3.7 million, as we also managed to sell Grant Hanley to Brescia as well. Interesting move there for the Scot, as he goes for £1.6 million to the Italian side. And I also did try very hard to sell Michel Mcgovern in this career mode as well. Obviously, the veteran Northern Irish goalkeeper is not going to do anything for you in the first season, or well, any season you're with him. He's 35 years old now, only 67 rated. He's on the cusp of retirement, so if you can sell him, get a bit of cash for him, I'd definitely recommend doing so in the first season. But after you've signed Tomori, I still would recommend a new centre-back with this Norwich team. I feel like you need two new centre-backs here. The one just isn't going to cut it. You're going to need a partner for Tomori in the first season, and there are 4 options here that will be fantastic for you. You've got the best 2 here, Ibrahim Konate and Upamecano, both French centre-halves that play for RB Leipzig. Either of these would be absolutely fantastic. They're both 79 overall with, I believe, 88 potential. So they're 2 of the best young centre-halves in the game. The problem is, RB Leipzig will probably hold you to ransom over these 2 centre-halves, as they are, I believe, their highest rated centre-halves. In fact, they're second and third highest rated, behind Will Orban. But either way, you'll still have to pay over the valuation to get either of these players in. They're both valued at £16 million. We agreed to deal with Upamecano for 18.25 mil, which actually is a really decent deal, but if we were to pull off that sign in there, that would use up basically all of my remaining transfer budget, and I still had some more targets in mind. So Ndicka and Juan Foyth were my plan B targets, if you will, and I agreed to deal with Frankfurt for £13 million for Ndicka. Now again, Upamecano's got more potential than Ndicka. Ndicka is 3 ratings lower, although he is a year younger than Upamecano, and he's also taller at 6'4" as well. Ndicka's potential is 86, Upamecano's, I believe, is 88, but he was the cheaper option at the time, so I opted to go for him. Really though, any of those 4 centre-halves would be fantastic there, and it just comes down to whatever deal you can get that you think is best, or whatever centre-half you would prefer to have in your side. Again, the RB Leipzig boys have both got 88 potential, although they are the most expensive, and Juan Foyth has 85 potential, and Ndicka has 86. I went with Evan, and I don't regret the choice either. Again, he's got the exciting prospect tag. He can also play left back as well to fill in for Jamal Lewis when he's tired or suspended or injured or whatever. And again, 76 overall means it's going to be your second highest centre-back regardless to start off with, and at just 19 years old, kid's got a very high ceiling, 86 potential, and there's no reason why you can get into the higher 80s with dynamic potential and player training in FIFA career mode this year. So yeah, we signed Ndicka for £13 million, so he and Tomori coming in for £25 million. That's basically your entire budget spent on your 2 new centre-backs here, but again, Norwich's problem has been in the defensive area. You need to improve that. That's the weakest area side. You need to shore up that back line, because you're going to get goals through Timu Pukki, there's no doubt about that. You've got some good supporting players like Cantwell, of course, on the left-hand side, and Buendia on the right-hand side. Goals probably won't be a problem for you in the first season, but keeping them out will be a challenge. So new centre-backs definitely are the area of concern, an area to prioritise when you're doing a Norwich career mode. But I also sold Tim Krul to Real Betis as well. Now, this is quite an interesting sale. Some of you guys might be wondering why I did this, because Krul is 76 rated, and he's not a bad goalkeeper. He's 31 years old, so whilst he will show signs of decline in the first couple of seasons, he's not bad backup whatsoever for Ralph Farman, who's only here on loan. Well, my recommendation would be to sell Tim Krul and buy a younger backup goalkeeper. We sold the Dutch goalkeeper to the Spanish side for £6 million. We also sell Closer here to PSV Eindhoven of the Netherlands for 4.25 mil as well. And again, because Ralph Farman is only here on loan, after the first season, he's going to go back to his parent club. Tim Krul, now in his early 30s, will start to show signs of decline pretty quickly as well after the first season. And Michel Mcgovern, at 36 years old, he's going to be a backup goalkeeper in season 2. So you need to address that area as well. Whilst it is a backup position, the backup goalkeeper, and not a major area of concern, it is something that needs addressing sooner rather than later. And the sooner you do address it, the more secure you'll feel for your long-term future at Carrow Road. So yeah, we sell Tim Krul to Real Betis, and we do sign a backup goalkeeper in just a moment's time. But before we do that, we signed Soumare from Lille. This is a really good young talented French midfielder. This guy is only 20 years old. He starts off 75 or 76 overall. We get him for 11.1 mil pounds. You can get him for around his valuation, again around 10 to 11 million pounds. He's got 86 potential as well. This kid really good, and without question your starting holding midfielder for many years to come. Sorry, 87 potential even. 87 potential, this guy. He's an amazing young defensive midfielder who's also 6'2" as well. He's very well balanced, he's comfortable on the ball, he's got good defensive stats as well, and pretty physical too at 6'2". So he'll go right into your first 11, slide into that defensive midfield position alongside Rupp, and again he will be your starting defensive midfielder for all the years you're at Carrow Road. Really good young central defence midfielder there, and certainly worth picking up. And again, you can get him for around 10 to 11 million pounds. We paid 11.1 mil for his services, and I don't regret that one bit. 87 potential. This guy's good enough to your first team right away, and he's going to be good enough to be a starter in pretty much any team when it's all said and done. But after the sale of Closer, our centre-back to PSV Eindhoven, I did decide to try and make one more signing, and it was for the backup goalkeeper role. After the sale of Tim Krul, we needed a new bench goalkeeper, and this is the guy I would recommend for a Norwich City career mode. It's Aaron Ramsdale of Bournemouth. This guy is 74 rated and 21 years old, and you might be sitting there thinking, hang on a minute, Docs, as we sign for £6 million, you've just sold Tim Krul, who's 2 ratings higher than Ramsdale, and you spent more money on a goalkeeper who is technically worse in his overall rating. Well, that might be true, but Ramsdale is 10 years younger than Tim Krul, and when the Dutch goalkeeper shows signs of decline, pretty much right from the get-go in the first season, Ramsdale is just going to get better. So at the end of the first season, Ramsdale is likely to be higher rated than Tim Krul. He's an exciting prospect with 84 potential, but with dynamic potential and player training, he can definitely get into the mid to high 80s as well. He's got some really good base stats at 21 years old, and again, he's 9 years younger than Ralph, he's 10 years younger than Tim, and again, in the first season as a backup goalkeeper, he's a safe pair of hands for the bench. Despite being 2 ratings lower than Tim Krul, you won't notice a massive difference in rating between the two of them, and if you want, you can even start him in the first season and maximise his potential. He's only 4 ratings lower than Farman, but not that worse of a goalkeeper. So either way, you know, if you want to start him in the first season or bleed him in naturally after Farman goes back to his parent club after his loan spell, totally up to you. But he's a great target to pick up, and again, definitely your future number 1 for many years to come at Carrow Road. So in the end, that was it for business with Norwich City. We had a very productive transfer window, selling 6 players for 20.6 mil. And when you look at the sales we negotiated here, almost every player was in their 30s. Hanley and Steeperman were the only 2 in their late 20s. And as for the young talent we signed, look at the players coming in here. We signed 4 players for £42 million. The oldest player was 21. That was Tomori and Ramsdale, both at 21. Soumare 20, and Ndika at 19 years old. Really good young talent coming into this Norwich team after a net loss of £21.4 million. The question is, could this youthful Norwich City side survive in the Premier League and make it to season 2 with Premier League football at Carrow Road for our 2nd season? Well, as you can see, we did indeed survive, but only just 2 points was the gap between us and 18th place Crystal Palace, as Roy Hodgson's side went down with Sheffield United and Bournemouth, who were winless in 38 games. Come on, EA, it's about time you fix these broken league tables. But yeah, Norwich City in the end survived by 2 points. We did have, and I thought this was really funny, we did have the second worst defensive record, second only to Bournemouth, who finished rock bottom with 79 29 goals conceded. So there was me prioritising defence in this Who to Sign For series here, episode, with 2 new centre-backs, a good defensive midfielder and a new backup goalkeeper as well. And we were the second worst defensive record in the season. I thought that was really funny there. But either way, we survived. We survived. That's the most important thing. In the Carabao Cup, we were knocked out in the second round, as you can see here, by the Championship side, Middlesbrough. Doesn't count towards our objectives, but I thought I'd show you it anyway, as Spurs were the eventual winners. And in the FA Cup, Liverpool won that by beating Nottingham Forest, the Championship side, by 3-0 after an all-Championship semi-final there. And as you can see, we were actually knocked out in the, was it the last 16 stage we were knocked out in? Yes, it was indeed. We were knocked out here. The last 32 we were knocked out in even, sorry. We lost to a Championship side Wigan by 2-1 at home as we were dumped out in the round of 32. But either way, whilst we didn't progress any further in the FA Cup, and whilst we might have only survived by the skin of our teeth in the Premier League, we still hit both our objectives. We kept Premier League football at Carrow Road for another season, and we hit the last 32 of the FA Cup as well. So, whilst we might have had the second worst defensive record in the division, do you know what? It doesn't matter. We survived. That's the most important thing. And Norwich City will have Premier League football at Carrow Road for Season 2 onwards. And, you know, really that's your only goal in the first season. I know it says there you need to reach the round of 32 in the FA Cup. You only need to go one round to get to that stage. But if you go out in the round of 64 in the first round you enter, don't worry about it too much. Your goal when managing Norwich City is this: keep them in the Premier League. If you can do that, you're going to be okay for the long-term future, because you'll get some more money to work with next season. And again, when you look at the team here with Norwich, there is so much young talent. It is such a youthful team. It's one of the youngest teams in the Premier League. There's a lot of great talent here at the side. And again, when you've added to that with the signings of Ramsdale, who grew 2 ratings, Tomori admittedly was quite disappointing, only grew 1 rating in the first season, and Dicker, though, he grew 2 ratings to 78 overall. So your new centre-back pairing now are both 78 rated, so really good start there for Ndicka, growing 2 ratings and playing 35 games in the Premier League in the first season as well. Again, Ramsdale growing 2 ratings. Like I said earlier, that means now he's as high rated as Tim Krul, if not higher, if Krul's showing signs of deterioration. So that's why he signed Ramsdale for the backup goalkeeper role. From next season onwards, he can be your number 1. And Sumare also grew 2 ratings in the first season as well, growing to 77 overall, playing 35 games in total and picking up 4 assists as well. So yeah, it was a really successful first season for Norwich in the end, and I didn't think we were going to survive. I've got to be honest, when I did this simulation, I thought we were going to get relegated, but instead to survive in the first season, buzzing with that. And again, with so much young talent here, as I run you through this side, if you can keep Premier League football at Carrow Road for Season 2 onwards, you should be okay, because what you will notice is your team continues to get better year after year due to how young it is and how good potential a lot of the players have as well. All in all, Norwich City will be a really fun career mode team to use, because again, it's a real challenge in the first season to keep them up. They are statistically one of the weakest rated sides in the division, but with a real stadium, some nice kits, and a lot of young talent with good potential as well, if you can add to that, you're set for a really fun long-term project with the Canaries at Carrow Road. But that will end today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys. So a big thank you for watching. Really hope you have enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy today's episode of Who to Sign For, then please drop a like. Much love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you for the next episode very soon.